What makes someone choose pain over safety? Sarah Martinez had been asking herself that question since she was 12, doing push-ups in her father's garage while other girls painted their nails. The retired Army sergeant would watch from the doorway, understanding something in his daughter that even she didn't fully grasp yet. Tonight, as she stared at the recruitment office poster on her bedroom wall, that question felt more urgent than ever. The small Texas town of Brownsville never produced heroes. It produced workers, mothers, teachers, good people living quiet lives. But Sarah had always felt different, not better, just restless, like she was meant for something that hadn't found her yet. Her mother worried about this restlessness, the way Sarah's eyes would drift during Sunday dinners, the way she'd disappear for hours walking alone in the desert. Her father, though, he understood. He'd seen that same look in the mirror when he was her age. "You sure about this, kiddo?" he asked one evening, finding her practicing rope climbs in the garage. The question carried weight. He wasn't asking about the exercise. He was asking about the path he could see her choosing, even if she hadn't fully chosen it yet. Sarah dropped from the rope, dirt streaking her face, sweat making tracks through the dust. For a moment, she looked exactly like what she was, a 17-year-old girl playing soldier in her father's garage. But when she spoke, her voice carried something that made him step back. "I want to protect people, Dad. I want to make a difference." The words hung in the air between them, simple words that would reshape everything. Her father nodded slowly, recognizing the moment for what it was, not a child's fantasy, but a calling taking root. The Marine Corps recruitment office smelled like fresh coffee and old promises. Posters lined the walls showing impossibly fit soldiers in impossibly clean uniforms doing impossibly heroic things. The recruiter, Sergeant Rodriguez, looked up from his paperwork when Sarah walked in. His expression shifted from polite attention to something harder to read. "You lost, miss." The question stung more than it should have. Sarah straightened her shoulders, drawing on reserves of confidence she wasn't sure she possessed. "I want to enlist." Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, studying her with eyes that had seen too much to be easily impressed. At 5'4" and barely 120 pounds, Sarah looked more like she should be applying to college, not combat. But there was something in her posture, the way she met his gaze without flinching, that made him pause. "You know what you're signing up for, young lady. This isn't summer camp. This isn't playing dress-up. This is life and death, and not everyone makes it home." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I know exactly what I'm signing up for, sir." The paperwork took hours. Forms asking about everything from medical history to family contacts to her deepest fears. With each signature, Sarah felt herself stepping further from the life she'd known and closer to something undefined but essential. When Rodriguez handed her the final document, he looked her in the eye one more time. "Last chance to change your mind. Once you sign this, you belong to us." Sarah signed without hesitation. Paris Island in August felt like training for hell itself. The humidity hit like a physical wall, and the drill instructor's voice cut through the South Carolina heat like a blade. Staff Sergeant Morrison had been breaking recruits for 15 years, and he took one look at Sarah and saw easy prey. "Well, well, what do we have here? A little girl who thinks she can play soldier." The other recruits, mostly 18 and 19-year-old boys who'd grown up on farms and football fields, snickered quietly. Sarah kept her eyes forward, jaw clenched, saying nothing. But inside something was crystallizing. Not anger exactly, determination. The first week nearly broke her. Physical training that left bigger, stronger recruits gasping left Sarah collapsed in the South Carolina mud. Her bunkmates whispered that she wouldn't last another day. Maybe they were right. Maybe this had all been a mistake. But every morning, Sarah got up before reveille. Every night after lights out, she studied by flashlight. When her body screamed for rest, she pushed harder. When her mind begged for mercy, she found more to give. Morrison noticed. How could he not? This slip of a girl who should have quit a dozen times was somehow keeping pace with men twice her size. More than keeping pace, she was excelling. Her shooting scores climbed daily. Her tactical awareness impressed even the most cynical instructors, and her refusal to quit had begun inspiring the other recruits. Martinez, Morrison called after a particularly brutal obstacle course run. Sarah had finished third out of 40 recruits, her uniform soaked with sweat and mud. "Why haven't you quit yet?" The question caught her off guard. She'd expected criticism, maybe grudging acknowledgement, but this sounded almost like curiosity. "Because someone has to protect the people who can't protect themselves, sir." Morrison studied her face for a long moment. Then, for the first time since she'd arrived, he almost smiled. "Outstanding, recruit, outstanding." Graduation day at Paris Island felt surreal. Sarah stood in formation wearing dress blues that had been tailored twice to fit her small frame, surrounded by Marines she'd bled and sweated alongside for 13 weeks. Her parents sat in the viewing stands, her mother dabbing at tears, her father sitting ramrod straight with pride. But it was Morrison's words during the ceremony that would stay with her forever. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the finest group of Marines I've ever had the privilege to train, but I want to highlight one in particular. Private Martinez came to us as a small-town girl with big dreams. She leaves us as one of the most dedicated, determined, and fearless Marines I've ever known. Whatever challenges lie ahead for this corps will be in good hands with warriors like her." The applause was thunderous, but Sarah barely heard it. She was thinking about a 12-year-old girl doing push-ups in a garage, about a question that had finally found its answer. She was thinking about what came next. Afghanistan chose its moments to remind you that beauty and terror could coexist in the same breath. Sarah's first deployment took her to Forward Operating Base Chapman, a collection of prefabricated buildings and blast walls carved into a valley that had seen conflict for centuries. The mountains rose around them like ancient sentinels, beautiful and merciless under the Afghan sun. Squad leader Sergeant Johnson sized up his new Marines on their first day in country. Sarah was the only woman in the unit, something that had raised eyebrows back at Camp Pendleton. But Johnson had read her training scores, and more importantly, he'd talked to Morrison. "Martinez, you're with Fire Team Alpha. We're heading out on patrol in 6 hours. Try not to get anyone killed." The words stung, but Sarah understood their purpose. This wasn't personal, it was practical. Trust had to be earned in combat, and gender didn't matter when bullets started flying. Her first patrol was a lesson in controlled terror. The weight of full battle gear in 110-degree heat, the constant scanning for improvised explosive devices, the knowledge that death could come from any shadow, any pile of rocks, any seemingly innocent civilian. Sarah felt her training kicking in, her senses hypertuned to every sound and movement. It was on her third week in country that everything changed. Her squad was returning from a routine patrol when the radio crackled with urgent reports. An army convoy had been ambushed 15 kilometers east, multiple casualties. Air support was 20 minutes out. "We're closest," Johnson announced grimly. "Saddle up." The convoy had been hit in a narrow valley, vehicles scattered like toys by the force of the explosions. Enemy fighters had positioned themselves on both sides of the road, creating a deadly crossfire that pinned down the survivors. Sarah could see muzzle flashes from the ridgelines, hear the distinctive crack of AK-47 rounds passing overhead. The squad took cover behind their vehicles, assessing the situation. The Army soldiers were trapped in the kill zone, unable to move forward or back. Without immediate action, they would all die. That's when Sarah did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She grabbed her M240 machine gun and started running toward the enemy position. "Martinez, what the hell are you doing?" Johnson shouted. But Sarah was already moving, weaving between cover points, her training taking over. She had identified the primary threat, a machine gun nest on the eastern ridge that was directing the most devastating fire. If she could neutralize that position, it would give the trapped soldiers a chance to escape. The weight of the machine gun and ammunition made her movements clumsy, but adrenaline compensated. Rounds snapped past her head as she bounded from rock to rock, closing the distance to the enemy position. At 50 meters, she dropped prone and opened fire. The effect was immediate. Her sustained bursts forced the enemy gunners to take cover, disrupting their rhythm. The trapped convoy seized the opportunity, vehicles roaring to life as they escaped the kill zone. "That crazy Marine just saved our asses," she heard one of the army soldiers yell over the radio. When air support finally arrived and the enemy fighters melted away into the mountains, Sarah found herself surrounded by grateful soldiers and amazed Marines. Johnson approached her as she cleaned her weapon, his expression unreadable. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen," he said finally. Sarah looked up from her weapon. "Did it work?" "Yeah, it worked." "Then it was brave." Johnson couldn't argue with that logic. Word of the ambush response spread through the base, then through the battalion, then beyond. Sarah Martinez, the small-town girl from Texas, had charged an enemy machine gun position to save soldiers she'd never met. It was the kind of action that created legends. But Sarah wasn't thinking about legends. She was thinking about the army medic who'd smiled at her after the firefight, about the young soldier who'd whispered, "Thank you," as his convoy drove away. She was thinking about how it felt to know that people were alive because she'd been willing to risk everything. That night, as she wrote in her journal by flashlight, Sarah realized something had changed. The girl who'd walked into the recruitment office had been searching for purpose. The Marine writing by flashlight in an Afghan desert had found it. 2 deployments later, Sarah's reputation preceded her wherever she went. The Marine who'd charged the machine gun in Afghanistan. The squad leader who'd led her team through impossible terrain to rescue downed aviators. The woman who seemed to have ice in her veins and fire in her heart. But it was a different kind of fire that would truly test her. The kind that burned at 800 degrees and could kill in seconds. The kind that even Navy SEALs would refuse to enter. The summons came on a Tuesday. No explanation, just orders to report to an address that didn't officially exist. Sarah found herself in a nondescript office building where a man in civilian clothes waited with a folder marked "Classified." "Sergeant Martinez, we've been watching your career with interest. We have an opportunity that might appeal to someone with your particular talents." The selection process took place in a location that candidates were forbidden to discuss. Sarah found herself competing against operators from every elite unit in the military: Rangers, Green Berets, Force Recon Marines, even a few SEALs. Men who were bigger, stronger, more experienced than her. Men who looked at her with mixtures of curiosity and skepticism. The first week eliminated half the candidates. Physical challenges designed to break even the strongest individuals. Sarah's small frame worked against her in some exercises, but her mental toughness kept her going when others quit. She had learned something that many of the bigger, stronger candidates hadn't, that the body will quit long before the mind if you let it. During one exercise, candidates had to carry heavy packs through freezing water for hours. Hypothermia set in quickly. Sarah watched as hardened warriors, men who'd survived multiple combat deployments, gave up and walked away. Her lips turned blue, her hands went numb, but she kept moving forward. "Why doesn't she quit?" one instructor asked another, watching Sarah struggle through the water. "She's half the size of these guys, but she's still going," came the reply. By the end of selection, only 8 candidates remained out of the original 53. Sarah was the only woman. More importantly, she had earned something that couldn't be bought or given: the respect of the toughest soldiers in the world. The real training was about to begin. Sarah had no idea that everything she'd endured so far was just preparation for a moment that would redefine what courage meant. A moment when she would walk into hell itself because people needed her too. The training facility hidden in the Nevada desert looked like something from science fiction. Simulation chambers that could recreate any environment on Earth. Scenarios so realistic that seasoned operators would emerge shaking. Sarah and the 7 other survivors found themselves in a world where impossible became routine. Their instructor was known only as Commander, a legend who'd served with every elite unit and carried scars from conflicts most people had never heard of. When he spoke, veteran warriors listened. When he looked at Sarah for the first time, his eyes showed no emotion. You think you're special because you made it through selection. Selection was just to see if you could follow orders. Now we find out if you can think when everything goes wrong. The first exercise seemed straightforward. Navigate through a burning building to rescue a hostage. The building was real. The fire was real. The danger was absolutely real. 3 candidates went before Sarah. All failed. The first panicked when smoke became too thick to see. The second got disoriented and went the wrong direction. The third reached the hostage but couldn't extract him before time ran out. When Sarah's turn came, she stood at the entrance studying the Inferno before her. Heat waves distorted the air. Smoke poured from broken windows. The sound of wood cracking and metal groaning filled the air. "Remember, Martinez," the commander said behind her. "Failure here means failure in the real world. People die when we fail." Sarah nodded and stepped into the flames. The smoke immediately attacked her eyes and lungs. The heat was overwhelming. She dropped to her knees, using techniques learned for navigating smoke-filled spaces. Every breath was a struggle. The building was a maze, hallways leading to dead ends, rooms blocked with furniture and debris. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, she heard a voice calling for help. Following the sound through 2 more rooms, she found the hostage, an instructor playing the role tied to a chair. He was conscious but coughing badly. "About time," he gasped. "I was starting to think they sent the wrong person." Getting to the hostage was only half the challenge. Carrying him out would be much harder. The man was bigger than Sarah and dead weight. The smoke was thickening, fire spreading closer. Her air supply was running low. Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone monitoring the exercise. Instead of trying to carry the man back the way she'd come, she broke through a window and lowered him to waiting instructors below. Then she jumped, rolling to absorb impact. The commander approached as Sarah removed her smoke-stained helmet. "That window wasn't part of the planned route." "The planned route would have gotten us both killed, sir," Sarah replied, still catching her breath. "Sometimes you have to make new plans." For the first time since training began, the commander almost smiled. "Outstanding answer, Martinez." The exercises became progressively more complex and dangerous. Sarah learned to defuse bombs under fire, rescue hostages from moving vehicles, operate in every conceivable terrain and weather condition. Each scenario pushed her further than the last. During one memorable session, she had to infiltrate a compound guarded by Navy SEALs who'd volunteered to make the training realistic. While other candidates planned frontal assaults or complex diversions, Sarah chose a different approach. She walked up to the front gate at midnight, wearing a cleaning lady uniform she'd acquired in town. The SEALs were suspicious, but Sarah's cover story was perfect. Forged work orders, fake identification, cleaning supplies. She chatted with the guards in Spanish, claiming to be a new employee starting the night shift. "She was so convincing," one SEAL admitted later, "that I actually started believing she was supposed to be there." Sarah completed her objectives and escaped through a service tunnel before anyone realized what had happened. The SEALs were embarrassed but impressed. They'd never been fooled so completely. "That woman has a mind like a steel trap," Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez told his teammates. "She thinks 3 steps ahead of everyone else." As training progressed, Sarah began understanding that her unit was being prepared for missions beyond normal military operations, skills that couldn't be found in manuals, scenarios that seemed impossible but were based on real situations. The commander pulled her aside after a particularly difficult exercise. "You're excelling at everything we throw at you, but I need to ask, are you prepared to walk into a situation where you might not come back? Are you prepared to face something so dangerous that even the bravest soldiers would hesitate?" Sarah looked him straight in the eye. "Sir, I didn't come this far to quit when things get scary." The commander nodded slowly. "Good, because your first real mission is going to test that resolve." The mission briefing took place in a room that didn't officially exist. Sarah sat with 5 other unit members, hardened veterans who'd proven themselves in impossible situations. Walls were covered with satellite photos, blueprints, and intelligence reports painting a picture of an inconceivable scenario. General Harrison, whose chest displayed ribbons from 3 wars, stood at the front. His expression was grave as he began speaking. "What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. Failure to complete this mission will result in thousands of innocent deaths." The target was a chemical weapons facility in enemy territory. Terrorists had taken control and were planning to release deadly toxins into a major city's water supply. The facility was heavily fortified, surrounded by hostile forces. Worse, the building was rigged with explosives that would detonate if anyone attempted a conventional assault. "The chemical storage area is protected by a fire suppression system," General Harrison explained, pointing to blueprints. "If activated, it releases gas that kills anyone in the building within minutes. The terrorists are using this as their ultimate defense." Sarah studied the plans carefully. The mission seemed impossible. The building had only one entrance that wouldn't trigger the suppression system, but that entrance led through a room filled with burning chemical waste. The heat reached over 800 degrees Fahrenheit. No human could survive those conditions for more than seconds. "Sir," asked Captain Morrison, the team leader, "how are we supposed to get through that room? Even our best protective gear won't work in that heat." General Harrison's expression grew more serious. "We've developed experimental protective suits, never tested in combat. Even with the suit, whoever goes through has less than 3 minutes before protection fails." Silence filled the room. 3 minutes to navigate burning hell, disable security systems, complete the mission. It was suicide. "I'll do it," Sarah said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Captain Morrison shook his head. "Martinez, you don't understand. This isn't like training. The heat will be so intense that even with the suit you might not survive." "I understand perfectly," Sarah replied. "Someone has to do it and I'm the smallest person on the team. I'll move faster than anyone else." General Harrison studied her face. "Are you sure, Sergeant? I won't order anyone to take this mission. It has to be voluntary." Sarah stood straighter. "I volunteered for this unit to save lives, sir. If I can save thousands by risking my own, that's an easy choice." Preparation took 2 weeks. Sarah trained with the experimental suit until she could move like it was normal clothing. She practiced the route until she could navigate blindfolded. Every detail had to be perfect. There would be no second chances. The night before the mission, Sarah called her parents. She couldn't tell them where she was going or what she was about to do, but she wanted to hear their voices. "You sound different, honey," her mother said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom. I just wanted to tell you I love you and Dad very much. You raised me to be strong, and that strength is going to help a lot of people." Her father seemed to understand more than he let on. "You be careful out there, kiddo. Remember what I taught you. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you are afraid." The mission began at 200 hours. Sarah and her team were inserted 5 miles from the target, moving through enemy territory for hours. By the time they reached the chemical facility, the sun was beginning to rise. The building looked like a fortress. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, windows blocked with steel plates. Sarah could see heat waves rising from the structure, distorting the air like a mirage. Chemical fires inside had been burning for days. Captain Morrison established communications with headquarters. "Control, this is Alpha Team, in position and ready to begin assault." "Roger, Alpha Team," came the reply. "Remember, you have a narrow window. Terrorists plan to activate their weapon at 800 hours, less than 2 hours to complete the mission." Sarah began putting on the experimental suit. It was heavier than expected, the helmet limiting her vision. The suit had its own air supply, but only 20 minutes worth. She had to get in, complete objectives, and get out before air ran out. As she prepared for the most dangerous moment of her life, Sarah thought about all the people counting on her. Families sleeping peacefully, unaware their lives hung in the balance. Children who would never wake up if she failed. The weight of their lives pressed down like a physical burden. "Martinez," Captain Morrison called over radio, "are you ready?" Sarah checked her equipment one final time, taking a deep breath of recycled air inside her helmet. In minutes, she would walk into fire so intense it defied human survival. Fear tried to creep into her mind, but she pushed it away. "I'm ready, sir," she said into her radio. "Let's save some lives." The entrance to the chemical facility looked like the mouth of hell itself. Orange flames danced behind thick windows, black smoke pouring from ventilation grates. Sarah could feel heat through her protective suit from 50 yards away. Temperature readings showed the air outside was already over 150 degrees. "Alpha Team, this is Control," crackled her earpiece. "We have confirmation terrorists are accelerating their timeline. You now have 90 minutes before they release toxins." Captain Morrison spoke quietly into his radio. "Martinez, you don't have to do this. We can find another way." Sarah was already moving toward the building. "Negative, sir. There is no other way, and we're running out of time." The team had created a diversion on the opposite side, drawing guards away from Sarah's entry point. Explosions echoed as smoke grenades created confusion among enemy forces. Sarah used the chaos to reach the service entrance leading directly into the burning chemical storage area. She placed her hand on the metal door and immediately pulled back. Even through protective gloves, the heat was overwhelming. The handle glowed red in the darkness. Sarah knew that opening this door would expose her to temperatures that could kill in seconds. "Control, this is Martinez," she spoke into her radio. "At entry point beginning infiltration now." "Roger, Martinez. Suit telemetry shows all systems green. Remember, maximum 3 minutes in those conditions before protection fails." Sarah grabbed the door handle with both hands and yanked it open. Superheated air hit her like a physical blow, her helmet immediately fogging from temperature differential. The room beyond was a nightmare of fire and smoke. Chemical drums were scattered everywhere, some burning, others leaking contents onto floors where they ignited in pools of flame. She stepped into the Inferno and immediately felt heat penetrating her suit. The temperature display showed 750 degrees and rising. Every breath was struggle, even with the suit's air supply. Navigation was nearly impossible. Smoke was so thick that helmet lights barely illuminated a few feet ahead. Sarah had memorized the room layout, but fire had changed everything. Debris blocked pathways. New chemical fires had started since intelligence photos were taken. "Martinez, report status." Captain Morrison's voice sounded distant through static. "I'm in the room," Sarah replied, voice strained from heat. "Visibility near zero. Moving toward control panel now." She pushed forward through the maze of fire and debris. Her suit's cooling system worked at maximum capacity, but she could feel body temperature rising. Sweat poured down her face inside the helmet, making it harder to see. A chemical drum exploded nearby, sending burning liquid across her path. She leaped over flames and kept moving. The control panel that would disable security systems was supposed to be on the far side, but Sarah couldn't see it through smoke and fire. Her helmet display showed she'd been in the room 2 minutes. 60 seconds left before protection failed completely. If she didn't find the panel soon, she would die in this chemical hell, and thousands of innocent people would die with her. Then she saw it, a faint green glow through the smoke. The control panel was partially hidden behind a fallen beam but still functional. Sarah pushed toward it, ignoring pain as heat began penetrating her suit. Her hands shook as she reached for the controls. The panel was more complex than expected, dozens of controls and displays instead of simple switches. Sarah's training kicked in as she identified critical systems. She had to disable the fire suppression system, unlock security doors, and jam terrorist communications, all while the room around her became a furnace. 30 seconds, Martinez, came the warning from her suit's computer. Suit integrity failing. Sarah's fingers flew over controls. She disabled the suppression system first, the most immediate threat. Next, she unlocked security doors throughout the building, giving her team access to areas where terrorists held hostages. As she worked on jamming communications, Sarah felt her suit beginning to fail. The cooling system gave out first, and immediately the heat became unbearable. Her helmet display flickered and went dark. She was working blind in a room hot enough to melt steel. Communications jammed, she gasped into her radio. Security systems disabled. Get in there and stop them. Martinez, get out now, Captain Morrison shouted. Your suit is failing. Sarah tried to move toward the exit, but her vision was blurring from heat. The protective suit that had been her lifeline was becoming an oven. She stumbled through smoke, using memory to navigate back toward the door she'd entered through. Behind her, she could hear her team breaching the building. Gunfire echoed through corridors as they engaged terrorists, but Sarah was focused on survival now. Every step was agony as heat penetrated deeper into her failing suit. She reached the door and fumbled for the handle. Her gloves were so hot she couldn't grip properly. Sarah pulled off the gloves and grabbed the metal handle with bare hands. Pain was excruciating, but she managed to open the door and stumble out into the relatively cool morning air. Sarah collapsed outside the building, her protective suit smoking from absorbed heat. Captain Morrison and the team medic rushed to her side as she pulled off her helmet with badly burned hands. "Status report," she gasped, even as the medic began treating her injuries. "We got them," Captain Morrison said, relief evident in his voice. "Terrorists are neutralized, all chemical weapons secured. The city is safe." Sarah closed her eyes and let the medic work on her burns. She had walked into fire that would have killed most people in seconds, and she had survived. More importantly, thousands of innocent people would wake up tomorrow because of what she had done. As the medical team prepared to evacuate her, Sarah could see Navy SEALs arriving as backup. These elite warriors who had seen combat worldwide stood quietly watching her being loaded onto a stretcher. They had heard what she had done, and even these hardened veterans were impressed. One SEAL, a grizzled veteran with 20 years of service, shook his head in amazement. "I've never seen anything like that. That woman walked into hell itself and came back out." The fire had tested her, but it hadn't defined her. What would define Sarah Martinez was what she did afterward, using her experience to light the way for others who needed to find their own courage. In the end, that would be the greatest victory of all. Years later, when Sarah stood in front of her high school classroom in Brownsville, Texas, she would look at her scarred hands and think not about the pain she had endured, but about the lives she had saved. The students would never know their teacher had once walked through chemical fire to save 50,000 strangers. They would only know that she believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage happen not in the moment of crisis, but in the quiet years that follow. Sometimes dignity doesn't announce itself with medals or recognition. Sometimes it simply teaches, mentors, and serves, lighting small flames of hope in young hearts who need to know that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when love demands it. She walked through fire once to save the lives of strangers, but she spent the rest of her life walking through the gentler flames of doubt and fear, showing others that courage isn't the absence of terror, it's the willingness to serve despite it.